Hello, my crafty friends. Welcome to my channel and welcome to a walkthrough of my country farm journal. If you've watched my last couple of videos, you've seen some of it, and there were requests for me to do a walkthrough, which I was wanting to do, so it's a win-win today. And I will link the other two videos beneath, in the description box, and that way I won't have to say things that I've said before in detail, so we can keep this to a shorter length. Okay, I made this journal because of the wonderful collaboration that Lidia from Raindrop Lila put together last month, April. It was for the month of April, called Spring Inspirations 2026. And most of the digitals in here are from her kits, not just that kit, but her other of her kits that I already owned. And I will put all the links to the entire collaboration and all of the makers and her digitals and the freebie prompt list. They'll be in the description box, and they're also in my DMs. They're in my profile page on Instagram. So this was the journal I chose, and as I've said previously, the book is from 1926. I used an altered book, so I used the original pages. I pulled a lot out, and it made for a very weak spine, so I figured out ways to connect the digitals or fix the page with fabric or washi tape, and I also fell in love with the altered book idea that's also country and grungy, and I will be definitely making it again. I've got one kind of in the works, and I'm going to take it out and work on it more heartily. I loved this book because of its color, and I put these brass photo corners on it to kind of coincide with this metal frame around this original tintype. The frame is one that came with the tintypes that were popular around the time of the Civil War. And I made a paper nameplate, not because I preferred it, but because I didn't think the rust ones really looked good. They just were, I don't know, this is kind of fancy. So I figured this was the farm lady who made it. It was a really important journal to her, and the rust one just seemed out of keeping for some reason. So I made one out of paper, cut one out. I think it was from Artie Mae's eons and eons ago, and I put gold, you can't see it, but a brass color of gold around the whole thing and kind of filled in a little bit. So in person it looks good enough. I would rather it be exactly the same metal, but sometimes we can't be too picky. And I aged a piece of linen and sewed it onto the paper before I glued the paper down, and I left the color of the green. However, I did clean this with a I think it's Purell cleaning wipe, which probably, if you didn't want something removed, it might remove it anyway. So I would say if you get a Purell clean wipe, check it out on colored things, because it completely changed the color. I think it brought it back to new, but boy, I didn't realize it was so dirty until I cleaned it. It's pretty amazing. And this is written by a man in 1898, and then the reprint came in 1826, which is what I have. So I decided to make the journal reflect the 1925 era. So 1898 was its first publication, and then 1925. So it's a Midwestern farm family, obviously out in the country if they have a farm, in that time frame. Okay, let's get started. Let me see if I can bring this closer and stand frame. That's always my sticky point here. Okay, hopefully that'll work out. Okay. So I don't want to say this is in the kit constantly, just basically it is. The kit on her Lydia's Etsy shop is comprised of many kits. There's many kits in the collection. So look for, well, it's linked, but within the collection there are many different kits that I think you can buy separately. Well, they're separately in that as well, I think. I'm going to stop talking before I totally confuse you. I took these plants out of my yard, or on a walk, and then out of my yard, and out of my yard, and dried them and glued them down here with the best matte, non-shine gel medium on the planet. I used to think it was the Collage one by Sizzix, but I still think that's like a 9 out of 10. But the 10 is Golden's medium soft gel matte. I bought the shiny by accident and I used it. So I put the shiny on first, and that's when I found out it was shiny. I've always used Golden and it's always been matte, so I didn't even read the label. And then the whole thing was shiny, the whole page. I thought it was ruined. So I bought the matte again, put it on top, and lo and behold, it's matte. Yeah, so it's really good, and it feels like they're fresh. You can't feel any of the gel medium. It just feels like a totally real leaf. And same thing with the flowers. Oh, I love it so much. So I know it's a bit pricey, but ladies, it's worth it if you really want a matte look. The other one is less expensive by Sizzix, but it is tiny amount. So this, okay, in my last video, which I'll link below, it was my day to host in Lydia's collaboration, and it was day 29, and my prompt was words. So you're going to see a lot of different ways that I used words, even here, and then I chose to put numbers on here. So I'm not going to go into detail on these because I go into the how-to and the why and what to look for, but suffice it to say that the words correspond with the picture. Okay? And then also on this one, I practice with darling little machine stitches. I've never tried any of the fancy stitches on my machine before. I've not even been interested. And so this time, I decided to try them. I've seen a couple people, use them lately, so I thought, okay, I'll give it a shot. It's a journaling card. And this is a page from one of Lydia's older kits called Timeless. It's a wonderful kit if you like outdoor scenes. We have a tuck spot here, another tuck spot here. These are papers that I got from a kit called Road Trip for Chapter 1 papers, and this is called their background pages. And this is an old envelope from Seattle, Washington, Hotel Strand, 1915, and it's got their label on the back. And then a little kid did a bunch of pencil marks around it, which is so cute. I made this piece of ephemera have a little place to write private thought. But I was so happy to find a space where it would be so fitting to show the horse-drawn carriage of kids, the horse-drawn wagon. Another of the frames. It's three-dimensional. It stands out. And then I just want to read you what this says because it says something so beautiful. Remember, he wrote this in 1898, and it's all about animals. He had a lot of friends that were wild animals on his farm. Note to reader, since then the animals are creatures with wants and feelings differing in degree only from our own. They surely have their rights. Isn't that beautiful? I so totally agree. If you've really, had a pet or gotten to know animals of any sort, they have feelings and thoughts, and they care about one another, and they care about their owner. It's a piece of fabric, which is a good way to hold the pages together. Journaling cards. This says a secret garden with some lace, and this says homegrown, which is hard to see because of the tape. This is another part of that paper from the Timeless kit. This is another frame. Foraging was the word that caught my eye here, and I picked a picture. I believe these are from Graphics Fairy Premium site. Oops, I didn't back it. Oh, I will. This is a little scratch pad I made, and this is a faux snakeskin. I'll talk more about it later, where I used it in a bigger amount so you can appreciate it. I was happy to find that. It seems so fitting. So fitting! This has cooking in it, so I pulled out my old recipe cards, and I love how natural and down to earth popovers, sweet cornbread. So I'm going to make these, particularly the popovers. They just look like so much fun. The sunlight of my heart. I'm thinking of gluing this on here or here. It's coffee dyed paper. And this is old school book paper, really, really old school book paper, fabric and vintage tape I made. More of that fabric. And this farm lady was indeed a quilter. So she received a card that had this wonderful turn of the century wool quilt. And this is the lady. I told you how I made this specifically in the other video. Those colors match so beautifully. This was a family album page. All of these are from Lydia's sepia photos collection, but I just thought they really looked like farm pictures. This one may be adjacent farm, okay? But there they are on their fence. And again, I think they're on their fence. Here's one of her quilting patterns. She likes applique. This is a card I made on Souvenir de la France's sample card paper. I covered everything. This, and this are fabric. And this, and this are scans of fabrics that I own. And I used to sell these in color sheets before people had color printers. And I put them by date. I had sheets that had a 20-year span so that people could learn to date their own quilts. And I never thought about cutting them up and using them, so I tried that here. And I like it. I mean, you really can't tell the difference between the real fabric and the photo. So that was fun. I have a whole bunch of those. This is a big pocket that I made some time ago. Quite a while ago, a few years ago, I'd say. And never had a place for it because it's a lot of strong colors and a lot of different colors. This is fabric. This is fabric. This is fabric. This is obviously fabric. I added muslin I coffee dyed, and I machine stitched around it all. And it's supposed to fold over. I might have cut it out a little bit different. Maybe this was cut here and that folded down. I remember I thought it was pretty cool. And then I added this picture inside, and yeah, I added that picture inside. And then this is the card that I made, the journaling card. Put a little bee there. I don't know who made it, but if you put William Morris and find the lady that sold outright 8.5 by 11s and envelopes and pockets and stuff, you'll see it's in there. She has a lot in her kit. I hardly ever used it too, so it was fun to find a place that fits so well with the colors. I have a video on how I made this, and also one of the ways I repair the book. I use this wallpaper, and I'll link that below. This is an old, very thin bottom to either a petticoat or a slip. And these are two of the journaling cards. This says, the purpose of art is washing the dust off our daily souls. Love that. Harmony I added, nature walks. It's a lady pulling flowers off the tree, and some old lace. And this is a kit, tag from the kit. I loved how this swirl, or the capital letter C, I worked it right into this swirl that was printed on the card. And I added lace here and lace here. And then this is a wonderful, she's got a bunch of really wonderful cabinet cards. And this is a favorite quote from Albert Einstein. Art is standing with one hand extended into the universe and one hand extended into the world, and letting ourselves be a conduit for passing energy. This is a receipt from my collection. It's like, I forget when it is. I think it's early 20th century. A pumpkin farmer from the Graphics Fairy. And just a little note paper. Found it in my stash of neutrals. This is an old envelope that I made look like it was really used as an envelope. It was a blank envelope. I put fabric in here from an old fabric that looks like a shirt that would have been popular in the day. And I added real stamps. I cut this out of something else to put it on top, and cut the top off of, stationery. And I actually have a couple of videos on how to do this yourself. It was before I was aware of where to get really unique stamps. I didn't want to get one rubber stamp and put it on every envelope because I made a ton of them. So if you want to go back to the basics, I think I have 2 videos and I will link them below. If it's only one, I'll just link the one. And then this is a paper from my stash. Because my prompt was words, I thought, okay, I'll make a poem, and I wanted to do it from her point of view. I see her as the farmer wife, and what I did was, as I put in what my prompts were, what I wanted to have AI find a poem of, thinking it was going to bring up a poem that existed. And it didn't. It brought up its own suggestion, which I didn't like much, but then it got me thinking, okay, let's see what we can do. So I ended up prompting it several times, and I changed it up. I combined a little bit, and then I rewrote certain sections, and I came up with a, not great by any means, but not bad. And it was a fun experiment with AI. It took me about, 20 minutes or so, I'd say. This is a real postcard from 1908. Beautiful 1-cent stamp with Ben Franklin on the front. You don't see a 1-cent Ben Franklin very often on things, or at least I haven't. And then this is the picture of the card. It's in Fitchburg, Massachusetts. So it sounds like that's where they fought something, doesn't it? Maybe it was the Civil War. And then this references the Pennsylvania Railroad Company. And I made this tag out of the same paper as on the cover, and then I put one of her cabinet cards on top of it. Love the greens. Added a quote and added a little thing to the top that I found in my neutral stash, which I almost never look in. And this is beautiful paper from her kit too. It's just so, comes in every color on white. It's really great, I think, for backing especially. Easy to write on. So this is where the biggest break was in the book. And you can see I took that back as far as I could go. And what I did to make it really super hardy is that I used a wide as the ribbon. This part is also over here, now hidden by this digital. But I used a thick craft with the strings in it, for shipping. It's a craft shipping tape. Heavy duty craft paper, not thin at all. And you use water to make it stick, so I think I used water and glue. And then put it down and pressed it. And no other place did I ever press. This was the only place, and I'm glad I didn't press anywhere else because it would have been crowded and it would have been probably just impossible to. You can see it doesn't really lay flat. It sticks up. And that's okay. Not a big deal. It's not that difficult at all. Anyway, the highlights on this page is I embossed some music paper over here, and then I made a tag. This is in her kit. This is a different color of that same paper I just mentioned. I used real lace at the top. Isn't it pretty? And real lace at the bottom. Same thing. And then this is vintage seam binding. Just found it the other day at a local flea market, and it matched her dress, or so I thought. Pretty good, darker version maybe. But what a gorgeous picture! Oh my goodness, this tag, stunner, with the piece dove on her shoulder and that beautiful dress she's wearing. So I was excited about that. I felt like it brought the whole thing together. And the other really cool thing here, and I go into a lot more detail in the video I did on words, but this is from about an 1850s quilt. And this is the bottom layer. So there was cotton inside, and I pulled the cotton off, and I put it later in the journal. So I'll talk more about that then. But I think at some point I must have used this as a background for something where I glued it. So I ended up taking that off, and then I stamped some wording. But this is really from a quilt that old. You can see the staining on there, and it's a very thin fabric. Back in that early time span, they would use more loosely woven cottons for the back, at least here in America. And then they would use a finer, more densely woven cotton for the top. And I will leave you hanging and tell you what that is when I get to the other one, where I can illustrate it differently. But it was easier for them to needle if they used a lighter weight on the back. Another one of my picture frames that speaks to the picture. That's a graphics fairy. And this author wrote about his own animals, and one of his favorite dogs was named Bingo. So that made me put a picture of my dog on here, and her name was Sages. That's her back end. I'm going to show you her other side too. Honestly, I couldn't find too many because they were all put away somewhere. This is a ripped out bottom of a document filled in with the gauze, and this is the tag. The center portion is from a kit called Field Notes that Tracy Fox has made, and this is a beautiful document in Lydia's kit. And then this is from the field documents. And this is kind of what some of his writing was. This is in German for some reason. Must be an ode to his dog in German. Maybe he was German. This is one of those old bags. You know, it's not that old, but I've had it a long time. They're made to look like they were from the end of the 1900s. And this is another cutout field note. And, oh, what I did on here, it was kind of bland when I just cut it out and glued it down. So I ended up taking a charcoal pencil, and I went around each white flower. These are whites, and I'd put aging on it, and I had put water on it, and I'd done a lot, and I ended up kind of washing it out. So I went over the stems in a charcoal pencil, and then I went around the different white flowers and some of the leaves in charcoal pencil to give it more definition. I'm glad I came up with it. I think it made a difference, and I'll remember it for the future. This is another paper from Lydia in the Timeless kit. It goes out here with more of a farm feel. You know, it's showing acres and acres of land that's undeveloped and all. I love it. It's one of my favorite papers. I love that kit. This is scrapbook paper. These are just generic butterflies. They're in a million different kits. And I used a piece of old natural unbleached muslin to hold the pages together well. This is from Tracy Fox. This is actually a freebie she put out, I think, with her last Christmas gift or the one before. And I added the words, "With a touch of midnight, the stars whispered her name." Isn't that just romantic and beautiful? I imagine the farmer had a lake near their house somehow. They had to get water from somewhere, right? celestial is speaking. Today's May 2nd. Last night until I think it's the 19th and maybe even the end of the month, there's going to be incredible things happening up in the sky in regards to the moon. And towards the end of the month, there's actually going to be meteors from the Halley's Comet going through the sky. And Venus is going to be near the moon, and the moon's going to be blue. And it's also further away than at any other time in many, many years. Now this is more of that snake skin I told you about. It's really three-dimensional completely. It's got a bit of a shine like a snake would. And it was much wider. There's more decoration here, kind of repetitive. And so I cut it off to, not make such a high pocket. But I got that on a roll, just like a ribbon. And it's like got some sort of a rough thing on the back, but it's like plastic. So authentic looking. I couldn't wait to find a way to use it. I've had it for about a year, I'd say. I think I got it at Joann's or something when they were closing. Postcard with a message. That looks like what they'd be walking down to go visit somebody. And then it's 1913. Quite the handwriting. Quite. This is a quilting patterns. If you order, these would be a way to see what you can order. This is a quilting sheet that I wrote up from when I was doing quilting. It was quite elaborate back when it had its it started again in the 1970s, and you had to make all the templates yourself from cardboard, and you had to cut them down into a perfect size or they wouldn't meet. And you also had to add the seam allowance to everything on all sides, and that had to be perfect. And then you had to redraw it all on fabric so you got the seam allowance right. Oh my gosh, it was not my funnest thing to do. Anyway, I thought that was fun. It's a memory of days gone by. Music paper. Art enables us to find ourselves and lose ourselves at the same time. Isn't that so true? Isn't that just so true? Find ourselves and lose ourselves. I love that. Okay, so this is the quilt piece that I was talking about. So you see right there, that is a piece of cottonseed debris. That's what it's called, cottonseed debris. That might be just a piece of leaf or a piece of the stem. It might even be off the coating on the seed. Cotton seeds had a brown coating on them. It wasn't uncommon. This is very common that there would be debris. There would even be complete seeds, which you could feel and see the darker color of on the top of the quilt. And it wasn't unusual to find lots of debris in the batting inside of it, because they would use kind of a thick batting. It was cotton, but they would put quite a bit in there because they were really using it for warmth. They also used wool, which of course didn't have debris. And so this, and let me just tell you that the cotton gin did not get the debris out entirely back then. And so that's why it was so common. Sometimes you can figure out if you're in a quandary about the date of a quilt. Sometimes you can tell because you can feel and see the seeds. I forget what the cutoff was when that wasn't so likely, but it was super likely in the 1900s up to through the 30s, I'd guess. But I could be wrong. It could have gone later. And this is from the same quilt. And what I was going to tell you is that on the top, I coffee dyed this. I stained it long time ago. And this would have been from the border, most likely, border quilting. You can see the stitches go up to form a leaf, and then this is a stem that would have formed an arch, and then that would have come down and go up like that and would have been a vine. And then the leaves might be on both sides, or might be a flower head in here. They made very heavily quilted on plain fabric borders to show off their quilting in this era. 1850, it would have been an inner border because they often use very fancy, expensive European fabrics for the outer borders. Anyway, they used a finer, as in more dense, fabric for the top of the quilts, and then a looser weave for the back, because they wanted to avoid, this used to be white, they wanted to avoid there being any view of the seeds or the seed dirt. so they would have it be dense, and then you couldn't see the darker color. When it's all white, you can actually see the dark of the seed in the top. And, you know, if a seed gets caught where the quilting's small, you're definitely going to see it. So this has a slightly, it's hard to tell in this, on my monitor anyway, because of my coloring of it, but there's a much looser weave on the back. And that made it easier to get the needle through, to get these teeny tiny stitches. The ladies that could spend all the time in the world, that were just doing it for hobby, they could get like 16 little tiny quilt marks in an inch. And then I thought this was kind of fun. It's actually a little tag I found and stuck that on there from Tim Holtz. And these are a couple of applique quilting patterns, and I put more music paper there. Oh, and this is a vintage ticking from an old seat cushion. This I continued from this side. Thought it looked nice to extend the page. These are 3 petals from my own garden. I think I put them on with glue stick because I noticed this one's a little loose, so I want to fix that. And this is from Graphics Fairy. And then over here we have some handmade, this is an envelope, which I cut in half. It's handmade paper that they put real, you can feel them, real leaves and real grasses in. And each one is different. Obviously, no two are alike. And I just thought, wow, what a find. I have about 8 that are in a drawer that, you know, I haven't really gone through much. So I thought, okay, what can I do? You see, Homemaker Greenhouse. So you get this cute little dash of color, and when you pull this, out it comes. To make living itself an art. And I go into this more in the video that I made a couple days ago, one video back, for my host day. Oh, let's see. It's a bit of a tight fit. Not that tight. Come on, there we go. Okay. And then I've got a couple of things in here. I decided I was going to be like a farmer and not throw anything away. I was going to use every scrap I had. And I added the words "among the wildflowers" and "exploring nature's wonders," and it's like a whole new look. They're just beautiful. You'd never known they were scraps. And then I used my other favorite fabric on the back. I loved this paper the minute I saw it. Very Art Deco. And so I thought, well, what can I do that won't cover it up? And so I made this frame. Now this frame actually kind of made itself, to be honest. I have the Sizzix concentric square metal dies. And when you, the square die is actually this width, this teeny little itty bitty width. And so I used these little tiny things that are under it, that you just throw away normally, to go around a frame that I cut with the die. So again, not using any scraps led me to make this, and I love it. And then the words, I thought, just landed beautifully. I loved it because of my word prompt. And then this is the center of my most favorite paper, which is on the cover, and my tintype covers up the part that I wanted to really show. So I was absolutely certain I had to use this scrap. And I love it. I love the little new rose, the baby rose, the cherries. I just love this picture. And I've just started using die cuts more often. I don't have too many, extraordinary ones or anything, but they're fun, and I'm enjoying using them. And here I used another one. So this is a geranium that I got on my walk. And it has one side, let's see if I can not get the skylight in there. Okay, there we go. So the coloring there, and then the coloring there. So different, don't you think? I love it. And I cut the backing out to allow there. I didn't think of it at first, but after I put this tag on, from Tracy Fox, of course, it just occurred to me, what if I just left, because there was so much of it, what if I just left it and put a stamp on it? So I love how that turned out. And then I made a coin envelope, a coin protector, and I put a washi tape with a bug in it. And it's actually pretty much see-through when you hold it up, but I think it looks cool there. And then I put vintage tape inside. I'm not sure which side I put it on, but the opposite side I put Forest Moss Distress, because I just felt like it was too contemporary looking, and I wanted it to look as old as the journal is. But I do like how that turned out quite a bit. Here's more of that envelope, the other part of it, another tag from Tracy's Kit Field Notes, more real leaves and grass. That's what the pages look like, nice white margins. Let's see, this envelope is 1915, and I wanted to read you this quote. I just love it. I found it in a 1993 journal of mine, and it's true to, I'd say it's truer today than it was then, because I was pretty focused back then on what I thought was my preconceived purpose. And I think it was, but anyway, let me read the quote. I began to have an idea of my life, not as the slow shaping of achievement to fit my preconceived purposes, but as the gradual discovery and growth of a purpose which I did not know. Isn't that what we find with our love of junk journaling? There's a purpose that we didn't know. It was by a woman named Joanna Field. She wrote it in 1900. She was an English psychologist. Her year of birth was 1900, and so how fitting to the journal. I was happy to be able to use that in here. Loved it when I saw it, and loved it again. This is a collage I made using almost all old ephemera. Now, this says Brazil square cookies, the recipe card I have. It actually would have read Brazil nut square cookies. And then up here, along with it, came this newspaper article, Brazil nuts rate high as a gift. They're very, very extremely nutritious for us, and we only need 1 or 2 a day. I don't know if they knew that then, but I guess they cost a lot, and so they were a gift. And one of the frames, Baking Day really stood out, so I built this around that. From the kit, this is a ticket that I had, and I had this in my stash. But here's another recipe card down here. And, here she is preparing for her day of baking with her Kellogg's Rice Krispie from Lydia's Sepia Collections. This is from a woman's spiritual book, and I made this early on to one of the prompts. I think it was butterflies. And then I cut these words out of the article that I didn't use, or out of the page. You are the artist. Create wings that please you. I love that. What a beautiful way to say it. I fly on wings of love. We all have difficulty thinking of ourselves as an artist, but I think we are. I chose this butterfly to go along with that tape. And they emulate the wings, which is why I chose this particular document. And then I put a couple of Tim Holtz die cuts down there to kind of emulate the grass. You can see when I first started doing the prompts, pretty simple pages. And here's my beloved. This is In Memoriam, Sages, Our Beloved Chow, June 2010 to May 27, 2025. I can't talk too much about it. She was sunshine. Absolutely, absolutely. The light of our life. Still cry about her every day. And then this is a dog picture in the book. So that's what made me think to put it there. This is a pocket. And I did this as a, I made the little squares down here, paint swatches, and I played with the hatching. And I made this such a long time ago. This is a magazine cutout. And so I thought, gosh, I gotta start using them. So it worked out well there because of the birds over here. And these are a couple of cards from Lidia. Another color of that background paper. And this poem I found in a book and pulled it out. Nature teaches nothing is lost, it's transmuted. That's really so beautiful. This is a quilter's reproduction, probably came out in the early 2000s, of feed sacking from the 20s and 30s. This is real feed sack. It might have been from a bolt. Obviously I bought it used, but they did sell it on the bolt after they found out that the seed bags, flower bags and seed bags, which they printed in these beautiful colors, because they found that the women were using the white feed sacks to make clothing for their kids and bed covers and kitchen towels. So then one smart entrepreneurial flower maker, seed grower, started to print the bags, and then they just got prettier and prettier and more unusual, and so eventually they started selling the same feed sack but as yardage, because then you could make a larger item in quicker time. So it's fun to have. This is from a 1920 quilt of mine. This is seersucker. I'm not sure seersucker was out that. It's textured, you know, seersucker. Wait, seersucker. Sear, like S-E-A-R. I don't know if that's how you spell it. S-U-C-E-R. Is dimensional. It's a dimensional weave, and those were really popular for men's shirts. So I'm sure that's what this was, but I think I bought it as yardage. And this is an old lace, and this is ubiquitous in terms of use. Like this colorway, it'd be synthetic red on a cream color or a white color background, in that kind of a design, which would be popular for a lot of things, mostly men's shirts. You know, you started seeing it when the reds came out. They were synthetic and stayed in the fabric and didn't cost anything. And so that was like 1870s, 1880s era wear use, and it lasted like, you know, through the 30s at least, if not later. And this is again what the pictures look like. Such a find, a book like this with all those. These are special pages to me, and this is from Graphics Fairy. And down to the end. This is a page from the kit that I used a watercolor pencil to very lightly go over the leaves and the squirrel at the bottom. And then this is the original stationer's label for the books he sold. It's embossed. It's three-dimensional, and or two-dimensional. It's beautiful, and I just could not see any reason to cover it up, and I couldn't get it loose. So I cut around it and put this funny tag. I'm ending with a laugh, okay? This is, to me, just hysterical tag. This came from Graphics Fairy Premium site, and first of all, are they not the two most miserable-looking people you've ever seen in your entire life? I mean, they just look... They're not even engaged in anything. They're just like looking straight ahead at the camera. Now, I don't know if they're on a film or if they're in a still photography studio, but obviously this is a fake background, and these are wheels up here that you probably can't tell. They're gears. And then this is above the fake background, this black area. So I don't know if this was moved along, if it was a movie set, because that occurred to me just recently, or if it was just the still that people would stand behind in order to have their photograph taken. But it's a hoot. I think it's so funny to see all this apparatus up there. You'd think that the picture would have been cut off, right? I don't know. I think it's funny. And then these are little bits that I decorated it with that came from Tim Holtz, and this is the stamp of mine. And then these stamps were on it, and I forgot to say this in my video on these word things, but I copied the words over a digital from Tracy Fox that is called Dispatch, and it has all these postal symbols on it. So that's kind of why these came up, and the whole thing kind of went in this direction. It says Traveler up here, so that was fun. I enjoyed that. And that is it, my friends. That is my Country Farm Journal. I hope you enjoyed it. She's one of my all-time favorites, and I'm happy to have shared her with you. I'm going to glue this down again. I like it spread out a little bit more. And if I didn't explain something clearly, please feel free to ask me, and I'd love to hear from you. I appreciate your comment no matter how short it is, and I look forward to seeing you again. So I hope you subscribe, and I'll see you then. Take care.